This is MMA Oddsbreaker.
All right, time for today's bonus fight. A big fight at light heavyweight, not officially announced, but it looks like it is going to take place between Lyoto Machida and Dan Henderson. Guys, I'm really looking forward to this fight. We're going to start off with Matt first. I'm going to open up Machida as a 2-to-1 favorite, minus 220. The comeback on Dan Henderson is going to be about plus 170. Give me your take, give me your bet.
Yeah, I thought long and hard about this one before I finally ended up going with Machida. You know, age has never really come into play with me when talking about Dan Henderson. He always seems to just defy the odds. He was like the youngest 40-year-old ever, but this last injury to him kind of got me thinking, you know, when you take a look at him, 42 years old, 37 pro fights, and you know, that last fight with Shogun is the type of fight that can change a career. I mean, even for a younger guy, but you know, Dan being 42 now, I mean, that was just a 5-round utter slugfest war, and some guys just don't come out of those, you know, doing very well. Machida's style, very elusive, in and out. He likes to fight at a distance, and that just doesn't favor Dan's strategy of late, which is essentially land a giant right hand. I mean, he hasn't been to decision since like January of 2009. So like going to decision doesn't really happen. The only way I see him winning the fight is landing a big right hand, and Lyoto Machida is just not that type of guy. So, you know, I see Machida getting in, keeping the distance, popping him a couple times and popping back outside, and probably winning a decision that the fans aren't going to be really super happy about. But, you know, Machida knows how important this fight is for his career, and I think he fights really smart and outpoints Dan Henderson.
All right, so Matt's going to go with Lyoto Machida. It's going to be 1,100 to win 500 at minus 220 odds. Let's throw over to Luca. Luca, what do you think about this fight?
This is a fight that I've been kind of going back and forth on, not on who I think will win, but whether or not I think that Lyoto Machida is worth a bet. Ultimately, I do think he is, but the current price is about the maximum I would bet him at. I mean, yeah, he should win this fight, but my concern is, of course, Dan Henderson's right hand. Now, I'm kind of in the belief that if you think a guy's only chance is to land, you know, one big punch, and other than that, he's completely outmatched, well, you should probably bet against him. But in this case, Dan Henderson's right hand is a very dangerous weapon, as we all know. And Lyoto Machida actually has been clipped a few times by overhand rights and gotten hurt. His knockout loss to Shogun was an overhand punch. His submission loss to John Jones was started off by getting dropped by an overhand punch. So you definitely have some concerns about that. And also, Lyoto Machida's style is he's willing to get hit sometimes to land a punch of his own. I know he's so elusive and stuff, but you'll see a lot of his punches come after a guy starts the motion to throw a punch at him, and he quickly hits him with a straight right before their punch lands. Well, if he does that against Dan Henderson and gets hit with a right in return, he's probably not going to be standing afterwards, and he could be knocked down, the fight could be over, and, you know, who knows what happens there. So there's definitely a lot of concerns here, but ultimately Lyoto Machida should win this fight. He's a better overall striker, and Dan Henderson, he is on this great run in terms of wins, but in a lot of his fights, he hasn't looked all that great, even though he has been winning. Another thing is, this fight might be 5 rounds whenever they do eventually announce it. If it is a main event, it will be 5 rounds. And I like Machida more in that case because Dan Henderson, we know, can gas after about 2 rounds usually. So Lyoto Machida might be able to finish him in that case. So depending if the fight's 3 or 5 rounds, I definitely like Machida more or less. But even if it's 3 at the worst, I still like Machida to win the fight. I think he is worth a bet at his current price, but basically no higher than that.
All right, so Luca Fury also going to lay the juice, minus 220. It's going to be 1,100 to win $500 on Lyoto Machida. So both of our experts do agree. Machida's the side over Dan Henderson. Stay tuned for what Miguel and I have to say during our odds adjustment segment.
Well, that's it for another episode of MMA Oddsbreakers. You can look for the lines that Nick broke right here on the show to start popping up at the sportbooks throughout the coming week. And a big special thanks, as always, to Luca Fury and Matt Brown, our special guests on the MMA Oddsbreaker segment. They did a great job.
Also, make sure you guys check out our website, MMAOddsbreaker.com, and follow us on Twitter at MMA Oddsbreaker. For Miguel Liderati, I'm Nick Kalikas saying until next time, enjoy the fights.